Hi folks, Josh Clark again. This recording will briefly discuss plant selection considerations when planning a landscape planting. Right off the bat, I want to reinforce the idea of using natives in our landscapes. This is a reminder that natives have evolved in the Chesapeake Bay region and are adapted to living in this region in terms of climate, soil, water needs, and interaction with other plants and animal species. This allows them to be part of the local ecology and require less fuss with watering, fertilizers, and pesticides. In terms of implementing total natives or percentage of natives in a planting plan, it comes down to personal preference and or what the site conditions and constraints show. WSA typically advocates for at least 85 to 100% native plants in a planting plan and ensuring that no invasive species are used. An important part of the plant vocabulary that stewards should know is the difference between straight species, cultivars, and nativars. Straight species of native plants are plants that have not been altered by human desires through breeding or other interventions, but rather remain in their natural state regarding characteristics such as bloom size and growth habit. This tends to be better for the local ecology as native pollinators and animals can easily recognize the plants and get their full benefit. Cultivar is short for cultivated variety, which basically tells you all you need to know. A cultivar is a plant that has been bred by humans to meet certain desirable characteristics that may include color, growth habit, bloom size, fragrance, hardiness, and habitat. Cultivars can present some problems when used in the landscape. These change the changes in the species can disconnect the plant from the local ecology. Pollinators and other animals may no longer be able to recognize them or be able to eat from them due to their genetic change. Because cultivars need heavy breeding maintenance from humans, it is rare for them to really produce good seed, which further removes it from the local ecology. Nativars is a term for a cultivar of a native species. Like all cultivars, nativars are the result of artificial selections made by humans from the natural variation found in a species. Nativars do come from plants that evolved to live in their local area, but critically, they are still bred and maintained by human hands for a selected trait, which means they no longer participate in natural reproduction patterns that would maintain genetic diversity. So, are nativars just the same as cultivars? Yes. That being said, there are some nativars, like the Appalachian spring dogwood, that have occurred naturally and have characteristics that can get back out into the local genetics. Specifically in this one, is a resistance to certain fungal disease. It is important to make sure that plants you use, whether they are straight species, cultivars, or nativars, are participating in their local ecology. Mount Cubis Center's trial garden is monitoring this extensively. You can find out more about this at their website. Next, I'm going to talk about some of the preferences that plants have. Like any other living thing, plants have a preference on where they would like to grow. By paying attention to these needs, you can ensure that they will thrive. Resources such as the Native Plants for Wildlife Habitat and Conservation Landscaping and the Chesapeake Bay Watershed booklet that you have and other online databases will help you navigate each plant's preference, specifically in terms of soil type, soil moisture, and sunniness. All things that if you've watched the previous recordings in this series, you should have an understanding of what your site is offering. Keep in mind that the installation of BMPs changes naturally occurring conditions that happen in a landscape. Different parts of the BMP will have new conditions to consider. The basin or ponding area of certain BMPs can be wet during a rain event, but dry most of the time. Side slopes of the basin will also range from wet to dry, but will be drier over time. The tops of the berms that surround BMPs also tend to be dry. Understanding how each component of a BMP interacts with the plants helps designers decide on which plant to use in which part of BMP planting plans. Beyond plants' preferences, another very important thing to keep in mind is what a plant will look like over time. Often we are planting very young plants in an installation. These plants will increase their height and width over time, so it is imperative to consider their mature size when deciding on which plant to use and where to place it within the landscape. Plants bring a lot of beauty to the landscape, whether that is a specific flower, an evergreen leaf, or a flowy texture. Plants have a lot to offer in this arena. Keeping this in mind, designers strive to have interest year round in the landscapes they design. I will discuss the seasonal interest chart in a different recording, but they are great tools in ensuring beauty year round. I've mentioned the local ecology multiple times in this recording, and you may remember it being mentioned in the pre-session resources for session 6. Understanding the way your plants fit into the local ecology is incredibly important. As you use native species, you essentially create islands for native animals in a sea of invasives, ornamentals, and concrete. These help refresh local seed banks and spread the natives beyond the project bounds that you're installing. This also helps create healthy, stable plant communities that stand against invasive species. It nourishes our native animals, whether that is bees and butterflies or rabbits and deer. Remember, if it isn't being eaten, it isn't part of the local ecology. This concludes this recording. Each plant you encounter will have different considerations. As you run into them and have questions, let me know.